welcome to our audience from around the world. My name is Alan Turletto, here on behalf of Redis Labs. Today I have the distinct pleasure to speak with Carlos Justiniano. Carlos is a longtime tech veteran, speaker, published ACM and IEEE author. He's an open source contributor, the founder of the Hydra framework, which we'll talk about. It's a Node.js library for building microservices powered by Redis. Carlos is also a three-time returning champion at RedisConf, having done great sessions for us in the past. So without further ado, welcome, Carlos, and thank you for being a part of this year's Redis conference. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you, Alan. Hello, everyone out there. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about Zenerchi and what you do there?
Yeah, so it's Zenerchi. I mean, it is absolutely a strange name. It's actually a concatenation of Zen, energy, and Chi, sort of a life force thing. So with that, Zenerchi is a life extension and a biomedical simulation and visualization AI company. That's a mouthful, but it does describe the places we get to play in. I'm a co-founder and VP of IoT and cloud platforms. My work at Zenerchi really focuses on the creation of e-health devices and the cloud platform infrastructure that receives secure communication from remote devices. I've also architected a biotech information system we call the BioGraph, and we'll talk more about that later, I suppose. Our work at Zenerchi really is at the intersection of devices, cloud systems, and advanced visualizations using 3D, VR, and AR technologies. Some of what we do is highlighted in my RedisConf presentation this year.
That's amazing. It sounds like there's a lot of cool things going on. Is there anything else you can share with us that's going on Zenerchi?
Yeah, so we're working on a lot of opportunities, most of which I really can't discuss. But as you can imagine, there's demand for what we do in this COVID-19 era. I mean, focusing on biotech. One thing we're super excited about that I can share is that we do have a product in development, which is scheduled to be released next month, which will allow you to create stock images and animated content of human physiology. We think that product will be a game changer in the medical illustration and education markets.
That's amazing. And as you mentioned, the timing likely couldn't be better with what's going on in the world. For our viewers that are not familiar or may have forgotten, but physiology is basically the study of how our bodies work, internal functions and mechanisms. In other words, really complicated stuff. However, Carlos, he does an exceptional job of explaining things in a fun, visual, and a simple way in his session. Speaking of which, Carlos, can you tell us the core theme of what you're presenting this year at RedisConf?
Yeah, so in this RedisConf, I'm presenting, I'm presenting about RedisGraph. So basically the use of RedisGraph in biotech, IoT, and connected fitness. My presentation is entitled Creating a Model of Human Physiology Using RedisGraph. And it touches on our BioGraph technology as Zenerchi with some examples of how we're using it.
That's great. I actually had a chance to watch it today, and it's really an amazing session for all of our audience, whether or not they have an interest in medical field or even graphs. If you haven't watched Carlos's session yet, I would highly recommend it. Bookmark it and check it out when you get a chance. So, Carlos, when did you first start using Redis?
Wow. It's about 2010, 2011 timeframe. I have to say, though, that it had me at data structures, and that's a reference to a famous movie here. I fell in love with the way that Redis embraces core Unix philosophy, the core Unix philosophy of do one thing and do it well. Each Redis feature embodies that philosophy using a set of feature-specific commands. There's a consistency in how commands operate on key spaces, which really makes learning new Redis modules a pleasure.
Yeah, I agree. So another Redis veteran, that's fantastic. And just, following up on your response, I've actually had the pleasure to have a few beers with Salvatore on a couple occasions. And I could tell you the concept of do one thing and do it well. It's not just something he takes pride in, but considers as Redis evolves over all these years. And it's actually emphasized by the fact that Redis is backwards compatible all the way to its origin. So I'm glad you brought up that point because it's really something unique about Redis. In the past two Redis conferences, you've presented on the use of the Hydra framework. Can you share a little bit about Hydra and how it uses Redis?
Yeah. So Hydra is a microservice library, and I actually don't like saying that it's a microservice library. We use it that way, but it actually is a library for building distributed applications. And so it heavily uses Redis. In my Redis Conf 18 presentation a few years ago, I took a deep dive into how Redis can be used to build lightweight microservices. In that talk, I covered how we use Redis to manage microservice presence, health checks, service discovery, load balancing, messaging, message queuing, job queuing, logging, and configuration management. Hydra does all of that by leveraging core Redis features, as well as providing the necessary bridging between features using code. So I've actually, and I want to make a little quick announcement here, but I have an intention to actually build a core Redis module, that loadable module that actually utilizes Redis Hydra concepts. So it's been in the back of my mind. I've spoken with Dave Nelson about this often, actually. And so I'm really feeling inspired to actually go ahead and take on that as an open source project, especially after listening to some of the talks, one of the talks in particular this year about the use of building Redis modules.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. And maybe I see some foreshadowing for maybe next year's Redis conference coming up here.
Every year I say it's the last one, but I always just feel inspired and pulled back in.
Someone tells me you're always going to be welcome. Which Redis product did you use and in the past, and what are the use cases you highlighted in your presentations?
Yeah, so at Zenerchi, we're still very much in development, although we're about to release our first actual product. But we do have partnerships that are sort of in motion. So we're using Redis Community Edition, but we're looking to move to Redis Enterprise in the near future. We're also, of course, using the Hydra library for building Node.js microservices. And if it's not already clear, just full disclosure here, I am the founder and core committer of that open source project. And so, definitely I kind of carry it with me everywhere I go. So Hydra makes extensive use of Redis features, and it handles things, like I said earlier, inter-service communication and other microservice concerns. So it's definitely a key piece of technology that I've been working on at least two companies now, Flywheel Sports for about 4.5 years prior. So my presentation primarily focuses on the use of RedisGraph in conjunction with our BioGraph. And so the BioGraph is a biotech information system that's, of course, heavily powered by RedisGraph, but also uses other Redis features. I want to point out an interesting statistic here. This is something that I only recently learned about. There's an estimate that the world's medical knowledge is increasing at an exponential rate, doubling every 73 days. So our BioGraph is really our way of organizing, the massive volume of medical information which is emerging, and incorporating that into our platform. So that really is the aspects that I'm trying to present in this year's presentation.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And you talk about some of the complexity that you're actually using Redis for, but going back, can you tell us about that aha moment when you realized that Redis really was more than a cache? What was that advanced use case that led you to kind of rediscover Redis?
So I honestly think that from the very beginning of my love affair with Redis, right, was really those rich data structures that provided the use cases, that literally just had me at hello. When I realized, having been a sort of a Memcache user, that, Redis was just this emerging rich environment where you could actually build information systems and create highly optimized, systems. And so I think that's sort of from the very beginning. I think I got some of that. I feel that much of the power that from Redis comes from the ability to organize information using key spaces. And it's that use of key spaces, with an increasingly rich set of commands that just introduces an enormous amount of power. So again, my Redis 18 presentation, which I mentioned earlier, took a deep dive into how extensively Redis can be used. So since that time, Redis has continued to evolve to introduce new and compelling suite of technologies. When it came time to doing our biograph, I was really excited to use Redis for that as well.
That's awesome. And I love the way you kind of mix in some of these movie quotes. Really makes it kind of fun. And just, we mentioned graphs a few times. In case some of our viewers are new to graph databases, do you think you could give us an understanding of how they're different than maybe what some of our audience might be used to with core Redis?
Yeah, sure. So graph databases organize information using nodes and links. And that's different from relational, which is really sort of this column and tabular metaphor, right? And so a key aspect, that really stands out, with the use of graph databases is that the relationships between nodes are immediate. And in some cases, visually accessible. And I make an attempt to really kind of convey that in my presentation. But graph databases are definitely different. Like all databases, GraphDBs also have their query languages. In the case of Neo4j and RedisGraph, that language is called Cypher. When using Redis, one has to use Redis query commands, which include embedded Cypher statements. So that's a little bit different, I suppose, in terms of like what people are normally familiar with Redis. Now that may sound complicated or perhaps inefficient, but I can assure you that it isn't. If you're just getting started with RedisGraph, definitely check out Daniel Justiniano. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Check out his presentation, which is really a practical introduction to RedisGraph.
Yeah, and I think you did an amazing job of visualizing and kind of simplifying the syntax semantics of a graph. So for the audience out there, if you weren't particularly looking for a Redis graph, I do think you would be interested in the presentation, so definitely check it out. Carlos, from your experience, what type of problems do graph databases solve? What's a graphy problem, and what stood out about RedisGraph to you?
I can tell you that the standard use case for graph, right? I think those who have been doing graphs for some time, graph databases, it's sort of the social networking problem. Mm-hmm. It's one that is like impossible to solve or have performance, with relational systems. So that's sort of like this iconic example, but by far, right? I have to say that one of the really great things about graph databases is that because they store information linked, that information can be navigated. It can be searched in ways that reveal hidden patterns of information. Even as I said that, I can't help but feel a sense of excitement about what that really means. It really is sort of an aha moment. I think when people get exposed and understand the power of graph databases, I think it's pretty easy to get hooked. I've actually started my graph database stuff using Neo4j probably 5 years before this presentation. So I definitely have experience with other graph databases, and I can tell you that seeing Redis embrace graphs was just, absolutely exciting for me. In my presentation, I do give an example of a graph query that finds the relationship between a eukaryotic cell, animal cell, and the coronavirus. RedisGraph does that by traversing the graph to find links. The query I shared is new in RedisGraph 2.0 release, and it's really an awesome addition. So congrats to the team, the RedisGraph team, for bringing that about. It is a late-breaking feature that I was really excited to introduce, in my talk.
That's awesome. So speaking of excitement, what additional tech trends in general are you excited about?
Well, I'm about to seriously date myself, but I've been in tech for over 30 years. The thing that really keeps me going is the never-ending evolution. There's so much to be excited about that it's hard to feel like you're missing out, simply because no one can do everything, and we're all forced to pick and choose technologies. What's really excited me over the past 5 years has been the evolution of IoT and connected fitness devices, and how those devices can capture data and transmit them to cloud systems where they're ripe for AI and machine learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see in Carlos's session, he's actually putting some of these devices to practice and getting that information in real time over to RedisGraph and being able to query that. It's really amazing. So do check it out. How do you think these trends are going to impact your specific business?
Well, at Zenergy, we recognized early on the potential of connected devices, particularly medical devices, and how and how if we combine those devices and that information, using advanced visualization, we can usher in a new age of science and discovery. Um, it's our hope, right, that the platform will inspire the next generation of scientists and educators. We recently, somewhat recently, maybe 2 months ago, we had the pleasure of presenting at the Leonardo Science Museum here in Salt Lake City. And it was just such a pleasure to see kids coming up with their parents and looking at some of the work that we were doing and trying on some of the VR headsets and just playing with some of the AR stuff and just really seeing, this medical, human physiology, come to life. We really feel that those are the next, scientists and educators, and it's just a pleasure to inspire them.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear, right? That the trend might go back to science and technology will be kind of a conduit to that. And you guys, I think, are going to be a big part of that. So it's amazing, the mission that you guys are on. Before Zenerchi, what did you use Redis for in the past?
At Flywheel Sports, we built a nationwide live and on-demand connected fitness product. The product is similar to the Peloton product. Users purchased a connected fitness exercise bike, and they competed against other riders from around the U.S. At Flywheel, we also built Hydra, which heavily leverages Redis to facilitate the microservices. So, our Hydra-based system, powered by Redis, was used in our live video production studio as part of the system's orchestration for live broadcasts. And it was in production, and it's also used in production to build a platform which powers the product. And honestly, as I talk to people who use Redis, I'm not sure in how many video production studios, right, actually can say that they're being powered by Redis. But we definitely embraced it, inside of the production studio, which had its own on-prem, setup servers, as well as on the cloud and Amazon AWS to power the entire platform as well. So at Zenergy, we're using Redis to create our cloud platform, and of course we're using Hydra again to do this. We're building this, biotech information system, the BioGraph. And the interesting thing about the BioGraph is that it's designed to navigate human physiology. We have a commercial product releasing next month, which is also powered by the BioGraph. So this will be the first product that actually is powered by our BioGraph technology, which is, powered by RedisGraph. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is. Was there any kind of specific challenges that you ran into where Redis was really kind of the only solution to get around that?
So I've worked with, having been a long-time Redis user, it's almost like it's a saying where, if you only have a hammer, then every problem, can be solved, using the hammer. Right. And it's not necessarily the case, but, I always gravitate towards how can Redis help in what I'm trying to do. So early on, I did a presentation at the Empire Node conference back in 2016. And as part of the presentation, I built this thing called a Hydra cluster, which is really just, it's a complete mini compute cluster built using Raspberry Pis and Arduino. And I had Redis, helping to orchestrate the cluster running on a Raspberry Pi 3. So from small computers, all the way to sort of cloud systems and cloud platforms at Flywheel and Zenergy. And the thing about Flywheel, right, is that the software that I built, we had a team, of course, but I made some very specific contributions. And part of that was the software that powered the live broadcasting studio, and it used Redis, inside the studio, as I mentioned earlier. We broadcasted over 2,000 live classes, each one powered in part by Redis. So that's pretty neat. So I think in terms of challenges, they've been broad. And Redis has always been this super handy tool that has sort of been able to address aspects of the problem at hand.
Yeah. Actually, I find, for RedisConf, one of the most fun parts about it is having, this huge community come together and share all the different problems, challenges thoughts that they have about how Redis can uniquely solve them. So I really appreciate you bringing that up here. Speaking of that, in terms of the future, where do you see Redis going? What's the future of Redis in your opinion?
Anywhere it wants to. Seriously, I think that the strength of the Redis community, backed by the support of Redis Labs, I think that means sky's the limit. I think from what I've seen year after year after year, is nothing short of amazing commitment. And of course, this happens in other open source projects as well. I think Redis is definitely a highlight of this and how well it can work. In that partnership between the open source contributors and a corporation, right? So I honestly think that because of that strength, it's wide open. I think the future's wide open.
That's awesome. I love it. So switching gears a little bit, getting a little more personal, I understand you actually have, if you're not interesting enough, a Guinness World Record. What's that about?
Yeah. So, back in 2000, I started work on a distributed computing project, which set out to create the world's largest distributed chess computer. You might ask, okay, why? It turns out that around that same time, and people, downloading software in the 2000s, can probably remember, SETI at Home and other distributed computing programs like projects that maybe, tried to crack encryption. Right, and so distributed.net, for example, and so I was just inspired by this massed, public-centered distributed computing projects where people actually could contribute their machines, the processing time of their machines, idle processing time, in order to solve problems or to do, interesting things. So in my case, I tried to apply that to chess, which I grew up playing chess since 7 years old, and my mom taught me how to play, and I always had this interest and fascination with chess, and I just saw this opportunity combine a chess interest with, distributed computing interest, and that's where I think ChessBrain came from. So, we set out to have a world record attempt, and this was organized with the Guinness World Record Science Committee, and so we flew out to Copenhagen, and ChessBrain, the name of the actual project, it played a game against chess grandmaster Peter Nilsson. The game lasted several hours before ending in a draw. That project set a world record, which still stands, using 2,070 machines operating across 56 different countries. Viewers can find out more about it at chessbrain.net. It's no longer active, but it was definitely an interesting use of about 5 years of my life.
That's awesome.
I have to say that I really wish I had Redis back then. We wrote all of the code in C and C++, and I could most definitely have used Redis at the time.
That's pretty cool. The first chess mesh network, or maybe even like a chess blockchain, whatever their right buzzword is there. Pretty cool.
Believe me, every once in a while, I go back and think about, this idea of Redis and serverless computing, and apply that to chess. So if anyone out there is listening that is so inspired, go for it, because I think that the ChessBrain record should be broken. It wouldn't be great if it just stood. So I would encourage that sort of line of investigation.
Absolutely. Records are meant to be broken. So you've also actually been a game developer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's true. I've had a career in game development spanning several years. I guess in my last game-related job, I was chief architect for an advanced technology team at Engineering Animation. So we built technology which was licensed by some of the leading game companies of the time, Activision, Disney Interactive, GT Interactive, to name a few. So on a somewhat related note, the last time I checked with the CEO, GameLeap.com was using Hydra to make, to power their backend Node.js service. So what GameLeap.com does is they actually provide sort of video instruction for some of the leading multiplayer games, and it's like this large community. It is powered by both Hydra and Redis. Again, last time I checked, which is probably last year. So that's sort of pretty cool.
Yeah, Hydra, the gift that keeps on giving, you, sounds like. Do you have any other interests you can share?
Yeah, in this time of social distancing, I think I, like perhaps many others, have maybe taken on a few extra hobbies or or activities, and I really gravitated to sort of using Udemy and and LinkedIn Learning and some of those sites to sort of keep current. So I mean, I do have a daily yoga practice, and I study qigong, which is just sort of an energy sort of practice. And I also use my flywheel bike and treadmill that I have at home, sort of my home gym. And I recently started, studying a Kung Fu fatal flute form. So that's basically a form where you have this very large stick, which is actually a flute. And it's a weapons form where you use the flute to actually strike. And anyway, it's pretty cool. And so that's something I'm actually sort of studying on the side. But I do have a long-standing passion for photography. And some of my work is at cjustphoto.com. And I think recently, I guess not that recently, but probably in the last 5 years or so, but recently in terms of my 30-year career, I've really taken to the maker movement, tinkering with the microcontrollers and sensors. And, I actually have a room here in my home that has a soldering station, a circuit board microscope, and just an array of electronic components. My wife has a 3D printer there, and, we basically prototype, components and things. So, yeah, just kind of a wide range of stuff going on when I'm not actually coding.
That's pretty amazing. I don't know how you find the time, and then you still have time for e-learning. Hopefully, if I ever get a chance to catch you on that flute, it'll be on a good day, so you don't use it as a weapon on that day. For those of you interested in watching Carlos and some of those meditation sessions, or even on a bike, again, check out that session. He combines all of that, even the personal stuff, into the session. It's really amazing. Any books or podcasts, something that you would kind of recommend? Maybe someone on LinkedIn or Twitter that's inspirational that you would promote?
I actually do listen to audible.com. I've been an audible.com subscriber since probably when the company first launched. It's just this idea of audiobooks and just kind of learning. I also had long commutes. So, I definitely listen to a lot of audio programs. But I mean, most recently, I think the thing that has really kind of made a big difference in my life is, I can recommend any of Dave Asbury's books. So Dave's the founder of Bulletproof 360, and he's considered by many to be the father of biohacking. I can tell you I lost about 30 pounds just based on his hacks. The interesting thing about Dave is that he's also a former hacker. So, yeah, a good guy to actually look up if you don't know anything about him.
I think I could use about a 10-pound biohack, so I appreciate that recommendation. I'm definitely going to check that out. Awesome stuff. Really appreciate it. Kind of switching gears a little bit, just quick kind of fun, quick questions. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Trek, because I just don't like fuzzy creatures and characters in my sci-fi. Triples notwithstanding.
Oh man! All right, I hope no Wookiees are watching this right now. Soup or salad?
Salad. I think it's a great way to stay healthy, and there's just endless possibilities for getting your veggies in.
And probably a biohack, I imagine. Beach or mountains?
Beach. I think I'm drawn to the ocean. Something about it that just draws me.
Yeah, and I actually got the chance to check out some of your photography. Just one more really cool thing about you. Again, I would recommend if you guys get a chance to check out Carlos, check out some of the photography that he posts online. Really, really great stuff. Android or iPhone?
I'm still waiting for the fully open source phone that's not attached to someone like Google, but it is Android for me right now. And, I like being able to run a terminal shell on my phone using Termex. And if you're an Android user out there and you haven't used Termex, highly recommend it. Look it up. Pretty awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, you could turn some of that commute time into productive time if you're not doing that already.
With it, actually, and this is just a little bit of an aside, but I actually have been able to run Hydra, Redis, Mongo, and Node.js code on my Android phone using Termex.
Wow, that's impressive. Favorite word?
It has to be manifest. I think it's because I love the idea that we create our own reality, we create our destiny. And I think this is something probably shared by all people contributing to open source software. Is this idea that you can have an idea for something, and as developers, we have this ability to actually manifest those ideas into tangible things that can be of benefit to others. So you have to say manifest.
Yeah, and I love today's day and age where technology has really kind of brought down some of the barriers for people wanting to become entrepreneurs, taking that idea, and building a business out of it. And it's no time better than the present to do that. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's really fantastic. So, well, we're running out of time here. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much. It's been really an honor to speak with you. It's a fantastic, I think, interview. Thanks so much for taking the time. Is there any way for our viewers to get in touch with you? I imagine they're going to want to.
Yeah, so I actually go by CJUS on almost all social media. So, particularly Twitter, my DM is wide open. So there's that easy way to get me. I'm also on GitHub and Instagram as CJUS. On LinkedIn, I use my full name. And there's more about me at http cjust.me. And there's a lot of contact information and other bits there that might be useful.
Awesome. So accessible on top of everything else. Please be sure to catch Carlos's on-demand session. It's available now in your video library. It's called Creating a Model of Human Physiology Using RedisGraph. Whether you are interested in science, technology, engineering, math, graphs, Redis, or I would even tell you art, there's going to be something there for you. So I highly recommend it. Do check it out. On behalf of Redis Labs, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of RedisConf. Cheers. Thank you, Carlos.